is Paige Minking. I am one of the co-chairs of the NACHW Nominations Committee. This is my second year doing that work. I have been on the NACHW board since 2020. I was in the first class of folks elected to the board after the founders launched the organization in 2019. Um, I also serve as our treasurer for the board. Um, and I've had various other leadership roles this work on the board. Um, and so, okay, Nina, are we set for recording?
We are. I apologize for the interruption. You're good to go.
Okay, cool. So this is the first year we're holding an info session now, as part of our process of recruiting new folks to run for the board. We wanted to share with you all about what it means to be on the NACHW board, some tips for your application, how the whole process works, and answer any questions you might have about how you can make your application as strong as possible as we are reviewing to choose folks for the slate. So, Nina, if you could go ahead and share the slides from, let's start at slide 3, since I already kind of got through the introduction. Beautiful. So, about the nominations committee, we have a handful of folks who are current board members that get together to talk about how we're going to recruit new folks for the board. So, this is a committee that is required by our bylaws. And the only folks who can serve on it are those who have been on the NACHW board for at least one full year. So it's folks who have been through the process of getting elected and have been on the board for at least a year, so they have a good handle of what it is that we really need. Folks who are on the NC are approved by the board. So the board votes on who is allowed to be on the committee or not. So all of that to say, it's a very thoughtful process of who is behind reviewing all of our applications, deciding what goes in the application and who is going to be on that final slate, and then overseeing the voting process. All right, next slide. One of the things I think is really important to note, and that I want everybody to understand, is that being on the NACHW board is really important in terms of our role as stewards of the national CHW workforce. So our organization is almost 6 years old now, but it was such a long, decades long process to get us to the point where we have a national organization that can serve as the voice of the field on a national level. And so we all take it very seriously that we are in this very treasured and honored position to be able to um, handle all of these things at a national level, to speak on behalf of the CHW workforce. And so it comes with immense privilege and also weight to be able to do this work. So what is it exactly that the board does? So we can go to the next slide. And why is it important? So a big part of what we do on the board, we respond to emergent needs and challenges with the voice of the CHW workforce. This feels more relevant now than ever, right? With so many things happening in our public health workforce overall, in addition to in our CHW workforce in the field. So, we make sure we are responding with one voice to the threats to the field and threats to public health. We represent our communities on the board, right? So most folks are coming in as a representative of their state or local association. We guide policies and direction of NACHW. We make sure that we're using that voice of our local communities as we decide, what is the official stance of NACHW on certain things. And then we do a lot of supporting the organization so that they can continue to be the leading voice in the CHW movement. And we'll get into more of what that really looks like in the next couple of slides. So next slide, Nina. So all that is great. This is the reason why it's important that we're doing this work, but what does that really mean? So in the next slide, I've outlined a little bit of what that really looks like. So we have monthly board meetings. Those are 2-hour long meetings. And in addition to those 2 hours that you are kind of required to dedicate your time to, we ask that everybody serves on at least one of our standing board committees. So some of y'all, I see some familiar faces. Some of y'all are already on some of those committees, which is awesome. Some of those are policy, workforce development, the ambassadors committee, the development committee, and then those that are only open to board members, we have our finance committee, nominations, and the executive committee. So those three only have current board members on them. And the nominations and the executive committee, those members have to be voted on by the overall board, and you have to have served for at least 1 year. So that's why those are noted in italics. Then, in addition to our standing committees, we regularly have ad hoc committees that may only meet 2 or 3 times to address very particular issues. Then we also have all of our NACHW programs and initiatives, grant funded projects, all of those sorts of things. Oftentimes we'll pull in board members as subject matter experts to provide input on the direction of the project or help kind of shape how we're going to address certain issues as a field. And then in addition to that, a kind of time spent in those meetings, right? We also have monthly materials and reports. We do a lot of business by email in between board meetings by sending out things for folks to review and provide input and feedback on. All right, next slide. Okay, so now the very fun part, I'm going to hand it over to my lovely colleague, Kim, who's going to talk about her experience being on the board. She's also been on as long as me. We came in the same cohort.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Paige. And thank you for every beautiful face that showed up this afternoon, because that really speaks volumes to those who are interested in this process. I will tell you, I am Kim J. I am from the state of Illinois. My origin story is pretty much similar to Paige's as when we started as that first cohort, a little bit of a nervous flutter about doing it, but it was about doing work that was going to be meaningful to the CHW workforce. I did begin my journey as an ambassador, and I worked in that role to provide my input, my feedback, my perspective from my state to see how we could collectively make a difference in what was happening for the greater good for the community health worker workforce. But my journey being on the board has been one that has been so enlightening and so meaningful, because it allowed me to absorb the knowledge from all the people that were in the room, but also to bring my whole self to that space and bring those that I represented with me. What I love about the board is the inclusivity of the conversations and the ability to even question some of the things that are happening. So you're sure about the process and protocol. So as you make your stance of being on the board, you can do that confidently and transparently, knowing that you are standing for something that will change this world. What I do like about it is you can tell I'm kind of shy. So with that, with that energy, I'm grateful to be amongst those who will help lift me up. I don't mind standing for what's right, because I do believe the time is always right to do what's right. And being a part of this board allows us the opportunity to do just that. It allows us to be vocal. It allows us to share our stories. It allows us to bring our organizations with us and then take it to the national level to see what the face of this community health worker workforce looks like because we have participated in the process. I encourage us not to sit on the sidelines because your voice is powerful. It carries weight. And many of us think that what we contribute doesn't make a difference. But I stand here in this moment in time to articulate that you definitely make a difference. And I love seeing the passion of those who are a part of this workforce come to the forefront because we don't get those opportunities often. But with this platform, we get to be a part of the mixture of what makes this organization powerful. And who doesn't want to be a part of a powerful origin story? So I would encourage anyone who has a desire to be a part of this phenomenal network to give it a try. Because again, when you stand on the board, you bring your organizations with you. You bring your truths with you. You bring your journey with you, and you're able to amplify in a way that changes what this workforce looks like, what it stands for, and how it's represented and compensated across the country. So, my plea to you is don't keep your gift, share it. Share it powerfully, share it confidently with a group of like minded folks who will help bring your story to fruition. So, with that being said, I want to again encourage you to take that leap, exercise your confidence, and become a member, at least take the steps to become a member of the NACHW board. Because again, your voice is valuable, and we need all valuable voices of like-minded energy in a place to make change. So I see uh, Natalie says, can you provide an average time commitment per month? I know some months may vary, but a range would be great to understand capacity of workload. For example, monthly meetings, 1 hour or more, average time, commitment to review materials. You got a lot of questions, Natalie, but I'm very glad you brought those to the forefront because as Paige explained before, we have to be able to carve out time for something as important as this, right? So a monthly meeting hour for most committees to talk about things that again bring about change for this workforce. So that's not something you can just jump in and jump out of. So there is a commitment that way, right? And when you think about if you become a part of an ad hoc committee to do something specifically focused on a task, that coming together can depend on what that group decides to be a comfortable cadence of time. But it is something that you would have to say, I'm committed to this process, and I can carve out an hour for my committee and 2 hours for my board meeting. And it's a monthly commitment. And if we think about it in a way, we think about it like we would do any other thing. We carve out time for our other activities. We carve out time for our lunches. We carve out time for things that we are dedicated to. So to me, it's not a heavy lift. If you believe in the process, let me lend this time to make change. Hey, you reap a benefit that is priceless because again, you are making a difference because you're bringing your whole self to a space that is committed to changing the environment of how community health workers are represented, how they're compensated, and how they are valued. So I hope that answered your question. Because
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
Beautiful, beautiful question. And I can add to that. I feel like it's really a range as well, depending on whether you jump in and decide to, like Kim and I co-chair committees or you know, join more than one committee, right? So you can like jump in and spend a ton of time, or you can join and just share your voice in sort of the main spaces of your one committee and the main board meetings, and then that would be a lower time commitment. But I would say on the minimum you're looking at least 5 hours a month. At the maximum, some of us are doing more like 5 hours a week, so it really has to do with whether you take on an officer position or co-chair. Um, so you can choose your own journey there.
But it's a beautiful thing.
It is. It sure is. So 5, yeah, okay, maybe it's more than 5. Maybe I'm under counting some of that, as just put in the chat. But that is not a requirement. Don't scare anybody off. Yanel is our secretary, so obviously once you get an officer position, it's a significantly larger time commitment. All right. So we'll move on to the next slide here. Okay, so let's talk through before that, I see that Lily, our board chair, has joined. Lily, would you like to give a brief welcome before I jump through the rest of the slides?
Greetings and thank you. I apologize for being late, but I've been in one meeting after another all day, which does not mean that this meeting is not as important, if not more important, than some of the ones that I've been in already. But I want to thank each and every one of you for taking time out this afternoon to be with us and to share your thoughts and to get an insight on what NACHW is all about and what it would mean as a board member for you. So with that, I'll say thank you, thank you, thank you. And I hope to see some of you, if not all of you, soon. And I hope every one of you, of course, has signed up for Unity, and we will see you there and in Ohio. And from that, I'll leave you with Paige and the rest of the group. Thank you so much. No in-person meeting is required for the Unity, Kim.
No, they were asking
So
about,
just Unity.
they was just asking about the NACHW board meetings. Are there any required
Oh,
in-person
no.
meetings? And that is a resounding no, because
No.
we're
We would love to at some point, but it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. But we do require anybody who's running to attend in person at Unity.
Yes.
For the process of running for the board. So I'll save the rest of I'll note the rest of these questions we'll get to, because I think some of these questions will get answered in the rest of our slides. So any that we haven't answered by the end, I'll make sure to come back to.
And Paige, I'll stay on. I'm in another meeting, but I'll stay on in listening mode on.
Okay, beautiful.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Lily. No, you're all good. Multitasking over there.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's see. Nina, can you get back to the slides? And you can start at slide 10.
Okay, one second. I will have it up in.
Or I can do it. I have it open.
Just a second.
Oh, I
I
have to have permission.
Sorry, I'm over here multitasking with questions, but
The problem with all of us.
all multitasking within the webinar. I think you should be all set. Can you see my screen?
Yes, beautiful.
Okay.
All right, so you can go to the next slide. So let me start with our timeline here. So the applications are due on April 7th, and I'll show y'all the applications shortly on the online system. It is an online form. Back when Kim and I did it, we had to fill out a Word document, so we've gotten very sophisticated by now using Qualtrics forms. We ask you things like, what is your background in the field? What experience do you have in the CHW workforce? What kind of assets and resources would you be bringing to the board? What organizations are you affiliated with that are relevant to your application? Also due on April 7th are all of your additional materials. So you need to do the online form, and then we also need your personal statement. And it's important to note that that personal statement will be, if you are chosen for the slate, will be posted on the website. So you want it to be something that is forward facing. And then we need your resume, and we need 2 letters of reference. And one of those, this is really, really important because some people miss this. One of those letters needs to be from your state or local CHW association. All right. And if you don't have a state association, we need you to explain somewhere in there in the application why you are not getting a letter from your state association. All right. So that is a very, very critical requirement. Now, after April 7th through June 6th is when our nominations committee will be reviewing applications. So we'll be looking over all of that. And that's including current board members who are applying to rerun. We will likely follow up with some follow-up questions if we want any clarity on things listed in your application. We sometimes hold candidate interviews if we want to get more information. And then we will decide on our final slate of candidates. At some point in that time period before the final slate is released, so basically between June 6th and June 30th, we will let you know if you were selected or not. So you'll have some time to prepare, to send us materials, an introduction video, a headshot, all of those things, because on June 30th, we will release the slate to NACHW membership 1 month before voting. So that's when we'll post all of that great stuff on the Unity website. We will plan to host a virtual candidate meet and greet for anybody who's not able to attend Unity to meet you there. So all of that will happen between June and July. And I am realizing now I put the wrong date in there because it's actually July 30th is the day that we're voting, not July 23rd. So at the annual meeting, we will open up voting. So we will have an in-person panel. So anybody who attended the Austin Unity Conference, you'll remember we had an in-person panel. Yanel was on it. So we will be doing that again at this year's Unity Conference. And then we'll open up the voting. So folks who are not attending Unity in person are also able to vote online, but they won't be able to live watch the panel. And so that's why we are hosting this virtual meet and greet ahead of time. That's why we're posting all those materials online. And we'll give some extra time for folks to review those materials and vote. Then we will select, the membership will select who is going to be on the board, and we'll have that induction of new members the final night of the Unity Conference during the gala. So that is the timeline. We'll go to the next slide.
Paige,
So
there
we're,
was,
oh,
I'm
go ahead.
sorry, Paige, there was a question in the chat that says, would a letter of reference from DHHS satisfy the requirement?
So it depends on how your Department of Health is structured. If it is essentially functioning similarly as an association, perhaps. But if you could send me an email, Lucilda, about what your exact situation is, and we can discuss that. But typically, no. Typically, we do want it from a CHW-led, organization like association or a network. Okay, and I'll get to the rest of the chat questions after we go through these. So what are we looking for in general for folks who are applying? We want folks who have a strong experience already doing CHW workforce development and organizing in their region or state, right? So we want folks who are already involved in their local associations and doing this sort of workforce development work in their communities. So we want them to be involved in local CHW policy, local CHW, capacity building, right? And then we want folks who can demonstrate good communication and organizational skills. So when you're filling out that application, pay attention to how you're representing yourself. So make sure that as you answer questions, you are answering the full question. You are writing it in a way like you're applying to a job. We want to see that you have really strong communication and organizational skills, that your application is complete and makes sense, and that we know that when you're on the board, we can expect to get clear and helpful and useful communications from you when we're doing board business. All right, next slide. Obviously, additionally, we want some passion for the CHW workforce. We want you here because you love the CHW workforce, love the work that we do. Ideally, we'd love to see previous engagement with NACHW. You know, we're almost 6 years old now. There has been lots of time for folks to get involved. So maybe that looks like participating in a committee. Maybe that looks like volunteering at the last Unity conference. Maybe that looks like showing up at a lot of our events, posting a lot on CHW Connect, right? So show us what are some of the ways that you've engaged with NACHW previously. And then this one is really important. We do have to navigate a lot of potential conflicts of interest because a lot of us are working on similar projects in our state as we'll be contributing to nationally, right? Some of our local state associations receive funds from NACHW and we're on the board. So there is it's not saying that you cannot participate if you have these conflicts of interest. We have lots of folks on the board who do, but we need to be open and honest and transparent about them so that we can make sure that anybody who does have a conflict of interest is recusing themselves when needed or just acknowledging that potential conflict. So we know those are unavoidable in a workforce that's as tight knit as ours, but we need you to be able to be committed to resolving that if any issues do come up. All right, next slide. So there was a question in the chat about geographical needs right now. So we just recently kind of finished doing an asset inventory here, and we do not currently have anyone on the board from Region 2. So if you live in New Jersey, New York, the Virgin Islands, or Puerto Rico, please consider applying because we don't have anybody on the board from Region 2. We also only have one person from these other 4 regions, and our board has 21 members. So only having one person is a pretty significant deficit there. And these are regions with a whole lot of community health workers. So if you live or work in regions 5, 8, 9, 10, and 2, we would love for you to consider applying. So then we have experience in fundraising. We really are looking for folks who can help us, especially right now with everything going on, folks who have a real dedicated experience to fundraising, financial oversight, funder development. Those are things we can really use some support in right now. Change and transition management and organizational development are all things we'd really love to see folks with a particular skill in. All right, next slide. Oh, and I should clarify that you are not required to be in those regions in order to apply. It's just a helpful thing that we are looking for right now. So please still apply if you're not in those regions. But know that those are some areas of the country that we really could use some help representing. So I want to stress this again. One letter of recommendation must be from your state CHW association. I did see, Triva put in the chat, maybe if you don't have a state association, obviously you can't get a letter of recommendation from something that does not exist. So if you are in a state that does not have one, please let us know that that's the case and find another strong person to give you a recommendation. All right, next slide. Some other tips, things that have come up in the past. Please know that only complete applications will be reviewed. So if you do not get everything in, if you don't get us all of your materials, we will not be able to review your application. So please make sure you get everything to us on time. If you are selected for the slate, your personal statement will be posted on the website, as I mentioned earlier. So make sure that that is something that is ready to be public facing. Now, acceptance to the slate does not guarantee election to the board of directors, right? So we're going to have a slate of nominees, and then the membership will vote. So just because you're selected for the slate does not mean you're already on the board. And also to say, application does not automatically mean you're accepted to the slate. So there's a process of us going through all of the applications and deciding who we feel like is ready to be put forward for a role on the board, to be voted on. We might reach out to schedule that interview or get additional questions. So please make sure that if your contact information changes after you submit the application, that you keep us updated and let us know. And then if you're not accepted to the slate this year, or if you've applied in the past and weren't accepted then, we always encourage you to apply again in the future. Most of the time when people don't get accepted, it's just because we'd like to see a few more years of experience doing this kind of work. So if you applied in the past and we didn't think you had enough quite yet, maybe you do now. So please consider reapplying. Because we'd love to see, we'd love to see that progress and that continued development, as you move through kind of leadership roles in the workforce. So it's a no is not a no forever. So please consider continuing to engage. Okay, so now I'm going to share my screen so I can show y'all the application. Oh, Nina, can I have permission to share my screen, pretty please? Okay, there we go. So here is our survey. I didn't mention this earlier. We used to allow external nominations. So if you really thought that your friend, your coworker should run, you could go in and nominate them. That got a little too complicated for us to handle. So now you can only self-nominate. So if you know somebody who you really want to run, then you just have to twist their arm and help them fill out the application and make sure they do it, because you can't do it for them anymore. So this is a self-nomination only. So we, of course, want all of this good information, all your background information, contact, etc. Oh, no, I'm going to have to fill all of this out. Okay, I don't want to fill all of this out. This is a roadblock I was not anticipating. But know that all of this stuff will be on this form. So fill all of that out. These are all required questions. When you get to the end, the final page of the application, you there will be a place there where you can actually upload your documents. So if you already have your resume ready to go and your personal statement, your letters of recommendation, we'd love for you to just upload those directly into the form, so that we don't have to search for them later. But you can also just email those directly to me or Nina. If you're the person who's writing your letter wants to send those directly to us, they can do that as well. So feel free to share that email address. They can send them to us directly, or they can send them to you to give to us, if that makes sense. So I think that was the bulk of what we wanted to share today. So let me check all of these questions in the chat. I see a couple of folks asking about how long the terms are. That definitely should have been something I put in the slides, so I apologize that I did not. The terms are 3 years each, and you can run twice consecutively. So you can be on the board for 6 years in a row if you're reelected in the middle. And then you can, in theory, at least, we're only 6 years old, you can, in theory, have as many terms as you want if you have a break in between them. So if you finish your 6 years, leave for a couple years, and then decide to come back, you can do that for another 3-year term. So that is how the terms work. We don't know for sure how many, well, we do know that there will be at least 7 slots open right now for the board. The board is a max of 21 people, and we can let it be a little bit less than that, but as of right now, we've always kept it at about 21 people. So we try to have a third turn it over every year. So that means seven slots are open. Now there are some board members who are currently on the board who are running again. So I think that's important to note, that you will likely be running against folks who are rerunning for another spot on the board. So let's see, I already answered about the geographic distribution. So I'm seeing some questions about particular states. Margarita, you're right. We don't currently have anyone from California. We had somebody who dropped off last year who was in California. Rhode Island, we don't currently have anybody from Rhode Island, but we do have other folks from that area in New England. We don't have anybody from Florida, and I want to say we've never had anybody from Florida. We don't currently have anybody from Georgia, but we have other folks from the Southeast. Terms are 3 years. Let's see what else. Okay, so Andrea, this is a great question because I had a very similar situation. So you're based in Virginia and DC, but you work nationally and regionally. So I am in Albuquerque, New Mexico, but a lot of my work, the bulk of my work, is either in other places or national level work. So that's really important to note in your application. And so if because of that you decide to maybe get a letter of recommendation from a different state CHW association or a national organization, just work with us on that. Let us know, send us an email with what you're thinking would be make your application better. And we'll decide whether that makes sense. Because we have had other people with similar situations where maybe they work in multiple states and they're not sure which one they should identify it, as like their main state when they put in the application, right? So this is not the first time we'll have encountered that sort of situation. So feel free to reach out. Candy, there is a difference between the state association and certification, right? So there are lots of states that don't have certification, but do have a state association. California has lots of regional associations or organizations. So if you're not linked into your local group or there isn't one where you are locally, there is a new state CHW association in California. So you could work with them as well. But feel free to email me directly if you want to talk over any of that in more detail. Okay, and then let's see. Okay, so there was a question about how long you needed to have been a NACHW member in order to apply. We don't have any sort of requirement around that, but yes, just like Nina said, it's not a great look for the application if you joined, right as you submitted the application, right? We want to see folks who've been engaged nationally on some level for a while. All right. Other questions? Did I miss any questions? Yanel, since you're here and on camera, did you want to add anything about your experience being on the board?
Not really, but sure. Anything for you, Paige. So, hi, everybody. I'm Yanel. I am working on my 3rd year for my first term. I am the board secretary and the Unity Conference chair. I also participate in the Workforce Development Committee, which is in about 20 minutes or so. And I'm also part of the Ambassador Committee. But I did originally apply as a board member and I got denied. And I'm like, people denied me. So I did go proactive. I joined the Workforce Development Committee first and I got accepted there. And then I joined the Ambassador Committee and I was an ambassador for maybe 6 months. I applied for the board and then I got elected that year. So when Paige said it makes a big difference on your participation in NACHW, as well as in your communities and your association, it does make a big difference.
Yeah, thank you so much for that perspective, Like we have this every year, we are looking for folks to run every year. So if this year you don't feel like you're ready yet, wait until next year. Like, think about what you can do in between now and next year at this time to get some of the experience we're really looking for, um, and build up that application in the meantime. All right. Are the bylaws accessible? So those would be accessible after you join the board. I don't think we make those publicly available, do we,
They should be on the website. They're supposed to
Okay,
be.
maybe they're on the website.
I'll
Can
double.
give them to you.
But
I'm not sure.
if you're a member,
But done it.
if you can't find it, we can send you a copy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But this is definitely is a time to ask any questions that you may have that may be lingering. You're like, I don't know if I want to ask it. Ask it. You have a good cohort of people to retrieve information from. So I think that if you are on the fence about anything, please, please, please use this opportunity. If not, I'm just going to say I'm really excited about what the prospects could be and what this next version of the board could look like because you decided to fill out that application, get those letters of recommendation and support, and submit them to the NACHW nominating committee. Your voice is powerful. Your presence is needed. We need to make sure that this workforce is amplified to the degree that it needs to be so that the world recognizes who we are, what we do, and the vitality of what we do. So, and all aspects are needed. All areas of expertise are needed, not just CHWs, but those that have that financial background, that everything. I'll just put it that way. So don't shy away from the opportunity to do that. And thank you all so much for your time. Paige, I give it to you.
All right. Thank you, Kim. Thanks, Yanel. Thanks, Lily. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. I can stick around for a couple minutes if anybody has some questions they didn't want to say out loud. I'd be happy to answer them. But otherwise, we look forward to seeing your applications and yeah,